I wanted to also chat, get into some of the nitty gritty now, because I get a lot of questions about this and about licensing and insurance. And, maybe we can chat about financing too, because I think you mentioned to me over email that you were looking to raise some money or, obviously, like I think I've interviewed a lot of CEOs of rideshare companies, and basically the two things that they always tell me is this was a lot harder than I expected and it cost a lot more. It was a lot more expensive, right? So,
Same thing right now.
yeah. So I think those are the two things that, my words of advice. But so I guess tell me, what have you done so far on licensing or insurance or, sort of more like the, I guess you would say like the nitty gritty, legal stuff of the business. And what
Yeah,
questions do
absolutely.
you have?
So basically, what I started out with doing is I obviously brought the idea to the most important people that I thought could help me out is my parents. I let them
Hmm.
know the idea, and I asked them their advice and what to do and how to grow it. And the first kind of investing that I got for this business was I turned 21 recently in
Hmm.
December, and I had an option of going on a fancy snowboarding trip across the country or $10,000 investment for this business. So that was my first investment, and I got that. And now I'm looking to give a little bit of percentage to my dad and his firm in Center City to
Hmm.
do full legal protection of my company. So I have the legal stuff down. They're looking at everything legally. They're going to make sure I have all the right licenses. And that's when I found
Hmm.
out just recently when I had asked him to look into it professionally to
Yeah.
everything I need. I found out it was a lot more stuff than I thought I needed. I didn't think that there was all this money that had to go into paying legally to run it. I thought that you
Hmm.
just had to get your business structured through the state and get your
Yeah.
driver's background check and everything like that. But I found out really quickly I need a $25,000 TNC license, which is a
Mhm.
transportation network company license, and that allows you to offer a for hire or livery service for pre-scheduled rides. And that's obviously if you're using a website or an app for that. And I have to get that. That is
Yeah.
one thing that there's a reason that we put a little halt into everything so far, and that is something I want to get in investors for. I have talked to a couple of real estate agents and a couple of real estate investors, a bunch of limo companies, and a lot of people have said no. We want to see it make the money first. We want to
Hmm.
see it make more money. We want to see it proven success. And I have the numbers. Like we've delivered well over 1,000 people. We've
Hmm.
delivered well over 1,000 students already. And there's so many repeat students every week.
Yeah.
Every week, the sororities, the fraternities, the Greek life organizations on campus, they go out every week. It's like
Yeah.
it's almost you can't ever say guaranteed business, but
Hmm.
in a sense, they're going out. You know that they're going to be doing social events. So you already have a little piece of that community of student base that is going to be out and that are going to need rides. So if I just target it and market it to those sororities, fraternities, and sports teams and everyone that goes out, you're going to have the whole student base follow it.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the most important things that I realized. That as long as I get this license, get it up and running, and I just connect with all those people that are guaranteed to go out, everyone else is going to follow.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, the basically every state. So every state has a licensing process, right? Like you said. So you would need a TNC license, right? Transportation Network Company license. And, good thing either you and or your dad are pretty on topic because that's basically exactly what it is. It's like the ability to do rides on demand. And I think usually they say specifically like through an app, right? So it's like if you want to pick up someone off the street, you can't do that with a TNC license, right? That would be more of a what they would call like a
Taxi
for
license.
hire taxi license, right? And so that's sort of a different avenue. But so, like for example, in New York City, every Uber and Lyft, New York City is kind of unique, but every Uber and Lyft driver in New York City is also licensed by the TLC, so the Transportation and Limo Committee, and they have commercial insurance. So they're driving on Uber and Lyft, but they can also pick up street fares or they can, do private rides or whatever they want. And the two most important things are licensing and insurance, right? So,
Right.
those are like the two basic things. And, every state is actually different. So, like in California, it's the CPUC, the California Public Utilities Commission. They've got a TNC license. And actually, I think like surprisingly, I want to say the California license is not 25,000. I want to say it's a lot less, maybe $5,000, $10,000. Some states though are pretty high. Some states are pretty low. That varies by state. If someone's trying to do this on their own, they could actually go to the Public Utilities Commission, look for that. Every state's a little different, but you would look for that TNC license basically, or maybe they call it like app-based driving, or I think most of the states call it TNC now, but that's the license that you would look for. And typically there is a fee. Some places actually, I think, charge like a percentage of rides or gross income. So it's all, you're going to pay them something basically, right? Either small to a lot. So that would be the first piece. But then the second piece is the commercial insurance. And this is where it does get a little bit tricky, because the commercial insurance is not crazy expensive on a per ride or per car basis, but it's really more to get the policy started, right? And so we've had Ed Walker, who's our fleet insurance partner, who might be a good guy for you to talk to actually at some point. But basically, like, a lot of times you're going to have to pay like 50 to $100,000 to get a policy started, right? Like, and so, it's a usage based policy. So that's kind of like, think of it as their minimum, right? Like, hey, you may not have enough you might only have one or two cars, but you still got to pay 50K, right? And if you only use like five or $10,000, of that insurance policy, right? They've got they've got minimums, right? Like many businesses do, right? Because it's not worth their time otherwise. And, if I don't know if you've listened to the episode that I did with the guy from Michigan who started a rideshare company right at the beginning of the pandemic. Unfortunately, terrible timing, but I know that he was able to find
Is
an
that the one that
insurance.
failed?
Yeah, the one that failed.
I
Um,
was.
yeah, and I think we put in the show notes of that one either the company that he used, or it might be good to I can connect you with him and we can check, because I want to say that they were actually able to get on the cheaper side the commercial insurance. And really, what commercial insurance does, right? So if you think about Uber and Lyft, right? Let's use them as an example, right? So for me to sign up and drive with Uber and Lyft outside of New York City, because they're an anomaly. I only need personal insurance, right? And Uber and Lyft, I get into an accident during period 2 or period 3. Uber and Lyft cover me for $1 million liability and a collision with a $2,500 deductible. So basically, if I smash into someone while I'm with a passenger, or en route to a ride and I've already accepted it, I've got pretty decent coverage. A bit of a high deductible, but pretty decent to good coverage. But during period 1, that's where there's a bit of a coverage gap. And the companies, they don't want to cover that period because you might be waiting up to 50% of the time, right? You might be driving around. And so it's sort of this gray area where a lot of folks sign up for Uber and Lyft with personal insurance. It's kind of a gap, to be honest. They sign up with personal insurance, but they're not fully covered, right? And so if you get into an accident during period 1 and you have personal insurance doesn't cover for hire driving, and they consider period 1 for hire. So if you tell your insurance company, right, that you were driving for Uber and Lyft and you had the app on but no passenger, they're going to be like, you're on your own. You got to cover yourself. And you talk to Uber and Lyft, and they're going to do state minimum liability limits and no collision coverage, right? So you're basically screwed. I mean, what some people do is just lie to their insurance company in that situation, which obviously I can't recommend, but I know that happens. I'm pretty sure it's like a felony, but to each their own, right? So and then I think in the surveys we've done, about half of drivers do end up getting rideshare insurance, which covers that period 1. And there's other products that actually cover periods 1, 2, and 3. So if you get into an accident, like Buckle, we've had them on the podcast recently, and I think they might be launching or in New Jersey already. They might be an interesting company to chat with. They actually cover you periods 1, 2, and 3. And so if you get into an accident, you don't even have to deal with Uber and Lyft or their high deductible. Buckle will just cover you. So there's a lot going on with insurance, but I think the key takeaway would sort of be, I mean, that's kind of like the second big component. And a lot of PUCs actually require full commercial insurance to get licensed as a TNC operator. Like California, they won't give you a license unless you have, pay that fee. You have to do some other stuff around background checks. And we've got this article on our website that I've sent you called How to Start a Rideshare Company. And I think I use California as an example. They've got 3 or 4, main things. Like you have to do background checks on your drivers. You have to pay us a fee, either percent or flat fee. You have to have, $1 million of commercial insurance coverage during periods 2 and 3. And so then you have to then go and acquire that commercial insurance to get licensed. I don't know how it is for New Jersey if you need that commercial insurance to be licensed, but you could imagine, there's sort of like this tipping point, right? Like at a certain scale, if the company is doing well and successful, and you don't have that coverage and you get into an accident, they're going to see like this company that's doing well and making money and sue you, right? When you have nothing to lose, it's like the risk is not as high, right? Like you're not doing it maybe by the books early on, but also what's the risk? Like I'm a college kid with no money, like, as long as you're not doing anything malevolent where you would go to jail, right? Like maybe you get into an accident and, someone sues you, right? Like I think that's kind of like the challenge in business, right? That you have to balance. Like I don't, like when people, especially I have a lot of friends in California who are starting businesses, like the first thing to do, I don't tell them to go form an LLC, right? Because an LLC usually gives you liability protection and it costs $1,000 in California. If this idea isn't going to go anywhere, you just wasted $1,000, right? So you kind of have to balance like, hey, if I start this business and someone sues me, what are my assets that are at risk, right? Like me, if I have a house and I've got, lots of money saved up, like I probably shouldn't start a business, where there's some liability without an LLC, right? Even if it is early on. So that's where I think you kind of have to think about your individual situation and, kind of like what assets you have at risk and also the business that you're operating. And, like I said, right, like, of course, as long as you're not doing anything that could get you put in jail, right? But like if it's just taking on additional risk and liability, right, that's like a balance that you'd have to make. You know what I mean?